There is more in you, that you can be more, you can become more. There's more capacity to grow, to learn, to change. That's what I heard in certain parts of growing up on my masculine journey. So there's more in you, son. And I had an amazing dad that always encouraged me. I had certain coaches that encouraged me in being a sportsman, a fighter, etc. And particularly there was a couple of voices that I heard, okay, which enabled me to really excel and push myself. And particularly, quite often down the track when I finished the boxing career, I used to train with a lot of men that I would train to fight, and I couldn't help myself. I would start just saying, "There's more in you, son. There's more in you," and I would push myself. I remember blokes, men that I was training, and they were running beside me doing stairs or sand dunes or whatever. Hey, are you okay? Because I was talking to myself, because I could hear those voices in my head, the same tone, the same words that would get me to excel, whether it be physically or mentally. I remember one saying, and even thinking about it now, I probably shouldn't say it, but I will, okay? I remember this one coach would say, "You're tough in the head." Not very, what's the word? It's not very articulate. Well, but that's what got through to me. And that's my point. There's always more in a man. And I suppose that's what great coaches do. They know the words to speak. Okay. So, but particularly, as I hit really between my 30s and 40s, looking back now, I'm in my 50s. There was things that blocked me, that stopped me. After having what I would consider, from where I started, I had great success, okay? And maybe not much compared to other people, but I'm just rowing my boat, okay? I was happy with where I was at. And then what happened, okay? Then what happened, maybe I'm hitting my, even late 20s, it really kicked in. But imagine this, if I go like at age 22, right? I end up in a drug and alcohol program, and I'd had already had success as a young kid. I'd won an Australian title racing horses. And I was like that, right? And then I ended up 22, not doing so hot. And then shortly after that, I had to get food vouchers, couldn't support myself, etc. And then from 5 years getting on track, getting that first mentor, that first coach, and then I introduced me to others. Within 4.5, 5 years, I had multiple houses. I was the Australian champion. I'd fought in Canada, overseas. Like, I'd achieved so much. But this is what happened. This is what happened to me, right? And this is what happens, I think, because then I had a couple of kids. Like, I married my woman, like my woman, my wife. Yeah, we've been together since we're kids. Since we're teenagers. I feel like she's the woman of my life. So I reach these things, and this is where blind spots have kicked in. I see it. When you've kind of overcome certain things, you can spot it in others. And anyway, what happened to me was pride kicked in. Pride. I didn't realize, and this was a massive blind spot. Okay, because I had certain defects in my makeup, in my character, and pride, because I always thought pride was a good thing. And it is. If you look at pride, if you study the word, there's the good pride where I'm proud of what I've achieved. I feel a sense of, hey, I did my best, But then there's that false pride, which is rooted in ego. Okay, because I remember when I started buying, I'm Australian champion, I started buying some houses, and I remember talking to a couple of people, and they go, "Oh, it's so hard, it's this, it's that." And this is like when I was buying houses for like 150, 200,000, right? People say it's hard, Anyway, and I remember saying, because every time I brought one, it seemed to go up 100 grand. It was one of those booming time of periods, which we've seen, which we've always seen, since time began. And I remember the arrogance in me. I remember the arrogance in me thinking, what's wrong with these people? Every time I buy a house, I make $100,000. Like, how hard is it? But it was it was arrogance. It was false pride. I was blessed. I was lucky. But anyway, what I've also learned, right, is that this is what happened to me, because I had in my measuring stick, I believe I had massive success to go from where I was, food vouchers, right, not knowing where I was, and long and lost and far from home, to then achieving certain things in sport with my family, and even developing a faith, it was like, whoa, hang on, this blind spot is starting to affect me. And this is the area, looking back now, okay, in my 50s, and looking back in because this is what false pride does, okay? If you've taken notes, this is something to look at, right? What it does, it actually stops growth. It stops you growing. So if you've reached a point and you've stopped growing, this could be something to look at, okay? What it does, it actually stops wisdom from developing, because when you go from one season to another, you can look back at the season and, oh, this is what I've learned, okay? So a lot of times if we're not transitioning from one season to another, because that is the masculine journey, we must transition. Nothing worse than when you see a bloke in his 40s hanging out at a nightclub. And I don't know who needed to hear that. But that's what happens, So it stops growth. It stops. You start to say things like, I got this. You stop asking for help. Because if I look at those years where I have massive acceleration in every area, man, I had boxing coaches speaking into me. I had pastors speaking into me. I had mentors speaking into me. I was just getting, and of course, they're all telling me to serve others, to be helpful to others, to be your best, do your best. There's more in you, son. I kept growing. But then all of a sudden I'm thinking I'm too good to listen to anyone. But I didn't realize that that's the insanity of this prideful, egotistical man that I believe I was. And you know what? Probably a lot of people didn't realize it, but you're the only one that knows what's going on in your head. I knew that. Well, probably my wife pulled me up a few times as well, but this is what I've learned, okay? This is what I've learned. It separates you it prolongs your future when you become prideful, okay? And I love it in Proverbs, the wisest man, the wealthiest, wisest man to have ever lived, okay? We're talking about King Solomon here. He wrote in Proverbs, I've got it 16:18, because it's pride before the fall. Okay, pride before the fall. So it's only a matter of time. Okay, principles. If there's truths and principles in ancient texts like the Bible, man, it's there for a reason. It stood the test of time. So I've learned to. But when I become prideful, without even realizing, I stopped growing. I stopped learning. I started to stop asking for help. And particularly when I hit that stage where I'm 32, I'd already been the Australian champion and then retired. There's videos on that. But then I realised there was more in me. There's more in me. I know there's more, So hence I come back and I fought from when I was 32 to 34. And listen, I'm happy. I set a goal to become a world champion and I didn't get there. I ended up fighting a world title eliminator in Germany, Berlin. And I was ranked 12th in the world. Hey, I'm happy, but looking back now, I could have done better. I actually could have done better. And I had some great men around me that were helping me, supporting me, encouraging me. But you know what? I could have done better if I had have asked for more help. Let that drop. That's a moderate. If I had have asked for more help, I would have done better. I know I would have. I would have had less injuries. I would have been able to do better. And that's a big pill to swallow. I stopped asking for help. I had to sell properties. I had to do things to support myself because I wouldn't ask for help. Goodness me, can you believe that? These days it's a different ballgame with all social media. Right? You just put something out there anyway. But you understand, I didn't that affected not just me, my family, my wife, my marriage. When me wouldn't ask for help, but I didn't see it at the time. I didn't realize what pride was, would you believe? So pride before the fall, okay? So when you're transitioning from one season to another, when you're transitioning, and this is something that I've heard many times. I heard it as a young man, as a fighter, particularly in that I heard this probably the first time around when I was about 24. And I remember this coach saying to me, and I'm developing myself. I've got great coaches, great men that are helping me in my personal life, in the gym, etc. And I remember this one coach pulling me up, in between rounds and what have you. We're doing a sparring session. There's maybe, 6 or 8 men. It's kind of a round robin. I'm in, I'm out. I'm in for 2 rounds, I'm out, etc. And I remember this coach, he goes to me, listen, son, there's 3 sorts of men we're dealing with here. There's 3 more sorts of men in you. There's the man I think I am. There's the man I tell you that I am. And then there's the guy on the inside. That's the guy you got to make your friend. That's the guy you got to talk to. Because inside that ring, that's the guy saying, man, this is hard. Man, I know if I can do this. Man, this is tense for me. I don't know. This guy's this. You get what I'm saying? That's the guy. That's the real guy. There's plenty of talk, and maybe that can be the pride that talks. Maybe the stubbornness. I didn't think when I was prideful, and I'm sorry, I'm probably still prideful today in certain aspects. But the thing is, right, when I was extremely prideful, let's say that, man, I didn't realize. I honestly didn't realize. And I suppose what I would say to men that are maybe in a similar state that what I was in my 30s and 40s, where you've had great success, but you feel stuck. Like, there's more in you. There's more, but why aren't you getting? Well, if you're prideful and you feel like you've hit a plateau, or if you've hit a plateau, I would say possibly there's some things that you don't know. Maybe there's some things that maybe if you asked for some help, maybe if I had have asked for some help, I could have done a little more. I could have become a little more at that particular time. So 3 sorts of men, man. The man I say I am, the man I think I am, and the guy on the inside. And that's the guy you got to make your friend, okay? So this guy's critical. And you're the only one that knows if this guy's critical. If he's judgment, if there's judgment about yourself and others, if you're rooted in stubbornness and you think that's a good quality, because that was me. So gentlemen, here we go. All right. So one of the things, okay, and this is what I'm a faith man, okay, man, and I learned faith the hard way. Let me tell you. I tried it Gav Top's way. It is hard, man. And there's some videos up on how I found my faith. Actually in Canada, getting ready in the dressing rooms, getting ready for a Commonwealth title fight, man. That was hard, man. I tell you. But this is what John 3:30 says. It says, for him to increase, I must decrease. So it's like I need to be humble. I need to say to myself, I don't have this. I need to say, God, listen, I'm actually unsure of what to do here. I'm actually unsure how to father these children, how to give this wife the best life. How to turn up to those vows that I spoke at that day we got married. And particularly as a business owner, as a leader of people, of men, of my team, of the community that I'm in, how do I do this, God? I'm for him to increase in my life. How do I decrease? I mean, that's what it says. So one of the things that I've got, and there's a link in here. We're running. I've been doing that. Jeepers. This particular challenge that I've been running, I've only been doing it. Well, I've only been doing it about a year or so, but it's almost like I've been doing this full time since 2009. I started getting that first mentor and coach in '95. This is accumulation of a couple of decades. Would you believe? What are we talking? 30 years, man. This is the masculine journey. There's so much more to learn, but particularly the last 15, 16 years, since it's all I've done is help man. I've constantly been improving, getting better, and I think that's a part of, as my pride is coming down, man, I'm able to actually have more impact. So, hey, listen, one of the things that I'm doing, and if you resonate with this, really, I would strongly suggest click the link and have a look at this Become a Better Man challenge, and particularly Become a Better Man challenge in the in the next little while, so that we're setting up the next 12 months, 2000, depending on when you watch this, Become a Better Man in 2026. How do you do that? Well, listen, do this challenge. Day one, we look at your enemy. What are the things that are holding you back? Day two, we look at what men actually need to flourish in their field as the way that you've been made. Honestly, it's all about leveling up in your family, your business, and your faith. And I tell you, the most crucial part of faith, the most crucial part of faith is actually courage, because you've got to start doing things you've never done before. You've got to start becoming the man you've never been before. If you want, and this is the whole idea of this Become a Better Man challenge, and particularly this one that I'm doing in November 17, is about really how do we, and this is just a thought, right? Like what do you need to do? Who do you need to become in order for 2026 to be the best year of your life? Because the truth is, I don't know how long you've got. I don't know how long I've got. They say live every day like it's the last. Well, yeah, I get that. What if you lived each year like it was your last? Like this year, I don't know where you're at, but I'm sure this year was awesome. Hey, man, you listen to me. You're still in the game, But imagine if we set out a plan, which we're going to do, to go through all the things and who you need to become, so that 2026 was the best year of your life. Because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to explain how to do that in this challenge, but more importantly, I'm going to explain who you need to become. So, gentlemen, I would strongly suggest grab your son. Okay, you got teenage sons or upwards, young adults, do this with them. It'll create the best conversations. I would say I've got men that are actually they've got small to medium businesses. They're getting the men in their businesses to do this particular challenge. This is about leadership. This is about growing, developing yourself in order so you can have more and more impact in your business, in your family, in your faith, in your community. Maybe you belong to a church, man. Let's get the men to rise up in the church, leaders in the community. Let's stop sitting back, poking the finger and blaming somebody else for you not living your dream. Okay, it's a poke in the chest. So, all right, gentlemen, hey, listen, maybe you want to share this with somebody. Maybe you want to take action. Maybe you want to change the world. I'll see you in the challenge. Over and out.